Hey, welcome to the ITP podcast. I'm Kent, the host guy, and with me today is Greg, the single guy.
Yo, yo, yo.
JP Mint from JP Mint Consulting. Good morning, JP Mint.
Hello and good evening from Mexico.
And our very special guest today, coming in from Hawaii, Nelson and Lisa File. Give a big round of applause for Nelson and Lisa File.
Aloha. Hey.
Aloha. So Nelson and Lisa, I was wondering if you could just tell the ITP crowds a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. Why don't you start, Lisa?
Oh, I get to start. Okay. Well, we are just newly retired.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Working overseas for 31 years. And we've been in a variety of places. But once we get to a place, we tend to stay for a number of years, 9 years or 11 years. We met in the Peace Corps. That kind of started our international journey, I would say. Back in 1984, we started. 1985 by the time we met, and we were in Peace Corps, Nepal back then. And Nelson can tell more about places we've been.
Look, I think that's probably where we first learned about international schools.
That's true. The Lincoln School.
Lincoln School. Haley Comet was happening.
Kathmandu.
We saw a poster that they had telescopes set up on their lawn, on their soccer pitch. And the Himalayas was supposed to be one of the best parts in the world to see Haley's Comet back, I think it was 86.
Well, wait, if you were in the Peace Corps, though, then you knew about the school because then you could go there and maybe beg for a shower. Right? From what I understand, Peace Corps, you're like out in the sticks, and all of a sudden there's these international schools and people that are like,
Going to Kathmandu was a big privilege.
Yes.
So Haley's Comet has like shower and then see the comet,
That's
right?
right. That's right. That's right. So anyhow, we learned of international schools. That's where I first learned of it.
Yeah, we didn't really know about them.
Were you already not teachers, but like certified teachers at that point? Or had you just graduated from a university?
No, I taught for 2 years at a Quaker school in Philadelphia. And Lisa?
I had graduated from University of Oregon, but I'd spent a year in Hawaii, just about a year, doing different jobs until Peace Corps had a spot for me. It happened to be in Nepal, teaching English.
And I was community water supply and sanitation overseer. So I was working in a remote Himalayan village, helping villagers build a gravity flow drinking water system.
Nelson, quick question for you. You're
Yeah.
trained as a teacher. You teach for a couple years. You sign up for the Peace Corps, and they look at you and they say, water management. So
Another good question.
Yeah.
was that something that you chose, or is that just what was needed?
No, I chose. I asked not to be a teacher. I wanted wider experience.
I've asked that every other week.
I chose that yesterday.
Look, I was teaching social studies in as I said, a private school in Philadelphia, a Quaker school. And, I had never traveled at all. I went to Canada once. And that was my big trip.
Yeah.
And in 11th grade French trip, we took the train to Quebec to practice our French.
And he knew about the social studies and the Egyptians and the way they did water sanitation and the Romans.
That's
so
right.
you brought that kind of social studies into your job as a sanitation guy, right?
Yeah,
That's
and look, I had
awesome.
taken some engineering courses when I was at university, and I'd done construction over the summers.
With his dad.
So Peace Corps felt I was qualified enough to help be an overseer of the water
Nice.
project. So,
And it sounds like you were there for 2 or 3 years then.
yeah, just almost 3 years, not quite 2.5, a little more than 2.5.
We had 3 months in country training,
language.
and for language and cultural, to learn the culture. And then your post, it's 2 years. And then you can't extend past that. Some people do. And Nepal had the highest rates of people either leaving early or people wanting to extend. It was one of those kind of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in a pretty remote place that, clearly had no easy access to water, no electricity, 10-hour walk to the nearest road, pretty remote. I was different body build at that point, walking quite a bit. And Lisa was teaching primary school kids, mostly English.
English. Yeah.
I didn't train as a teacher. From there, I learned that Brown had a master's of teaching degree, and it was a 1-year program, which was very appealing. And so I applied to Brown and was accepted and spent a year at Brown getting teacher certification and doing It was a combined course in history and teaching.
Because at that point, Nelson, were you thinking I want to go international? Like I want to teach, I want to go international. Was that sort of the goal?
At that point, I wanted to teach. I was committed to teaching. After my first 2 years of teaching, I was hooked. I loved it. I joined the Peace Corps really I feel everyone should do service, and the Peace Corps met that need. I felt I needed to learn more about the world to be a better teacher. And, I wanted to go to a part of the world I'd never lived in before to learn about it.
You spent the time in the Peace Corps, you came back. Was the Peace Corps, that experience on your resume, was that helpful for breaking into the field of education, for getting into a really nice college like Brown? When you think about like young people thinking about getting into the profession, wanting to travel the world, is the Peace Corps something that you would recommend to these young folks?
Look, it was an incredible experience, not only because I met the love of my life there. We've been married, ever since. But it was an incredible experience that just never leaves you. You're living in a society, you're the only one who speaks English. Very few, at least in Nepal, very few people are educated beyond the 4th or 5th grade. Very few people could read. I probably read 200 books in the 3 years I was in the Peace Corps because there was nothing else to do in the village. There was no electricity. There was a radio I could listen to, the BBC. But when you're in the village, and Peace Corps had a library, he'd go to Kathmandu and bring books back from the, so I became very well read. I read a lot of classics, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And
I think more to what you're asking is the personal experience of it is so strong. And there's a confidence with that, right? If I could manage that, you carry that with you, that foundationally, you carry that with you going into facing other challenges. And again, just to learn about the world and know more about it than just our American perspective and gain more of a global perspective, I think that was really a real blessing of it. And I think when you start moving in international circles, people recognize the Peace Corps volunteers, Peace Corps service, and they kind of have a sense of that. And then they also have a sense that you're able to manage different and difficult situations possibly, because we'll throw out there, our very first time going to international school was in Kinshasa, Zaire at that time. Mobutu was the dictator and the army mutinied, and we had only been in country 7 weeks. And we faced evacuation. So we went through a really interesting first year.
Tanks rolling down the streets, gunfire at night.
But
my life is so boring.
In deter us. Next year, we went back on the circuit and were hired in New Delhi, where we were for 11 years and started our family there.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so now we're starting to get into some of the international school locations that you two have been at.
Yeah.
So let's pick up from the end of the Peace Corps.
Yep.
You come back, you get your certification. And Lisa, you have your cert.
No, I actually didn't. We both, well, you did. You got your public.
Yeah.
Yes, I got my master's. So I had a bachelor's from U of O, Bachelor's of Science in PE and Health. And then I went to Westchester University outside Philadelphia to get a master's in PE and Health. And then I started working at the same school as Nelson as a PE teacher because someone went on maternity leave, decided not to come back the following year. I got to continue. So the combination of having the master's degree and experience in some countries, I don't know if all of them, but the ones we went to, that was enough. But saying that, once we were establishing ourselves in New Delhi, India, I did go through the process with the University of Michigan program. Michigan State, sorry, to get teacher certified.
And what was that program like? Because I've never heard of that one.
Well, it was a while ago because it would have been in the...
but like, it wouldn't have been remote, I don't think,
no,
like online.
We had to go to France for in the summer for part of this. We had
some people have sacrifices,
yes,
right?
we had adopted our daughter Amy, and she was two summer, so it would have been the summer of 95 or 95. And it was, I can't remember the name of the program other than...
Well, it was Michigan State University had a remote campus.
Yeah, MSU had remote, yeah.
MSU.
Wow.
Near Nice.
Yes. So you had to come and do courses. It was pretty intense. Nelson was daddy daycare that summer. And
Daddy
I
Nelson.
got to go to the beaches and play with my daughter.
he had a great time.
Yeah, I'll have a glass of wine, some more
Yes,
cheese,
yeah.
and yeah, my daughter needs a little bottle
And I'm,
warmed up.
trying to write my papers and all that sort of stuff.
Lisa,
Yeah.
did your school in New Delhi pay for the program, or did you pay for that yourself?
No, we paid for it.
Yeah. Right. And then there was coursework during the year, and, reflecting on your teaching. And in fact, as we're cleaning through things in the house, I found what I put together to send to MSU to be certified way back, how you keep those things.
And then we had to go to Ann Arbor one summer for her to sit the Michigan State test.
Yes. Yeah.
To get certified in
right.
Michigan.
Well, they have a strong education program there. So for
Yeah.
the fact that, and a lot of the strong educational universities have satellites that they do in different countries for
Yeah.
master's programs over the summer, et cetera, where you do it in face, like for 3 months or 2 months and
Right.
get your
Yes.
credits in. You might go back another summer and do it again, but
Yes.
whatever. It's
Yeah.
great that you did that, and you did that after you got into it teaching, but it was the timing, I guess you could say, because you were there as a support wife while he got his,
No,
had
I
his
was
No,
teaching.
she was
and
working
then,
full time.
I was working.
oh, you taught at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was.
I guess I better wake
got it
up.
before we went to Delhi.
Yeah.
I went to Brown for a full year,
Yeah.
and then we went back to Friends Central School in Philadelphia for 3 more years. Lisa got our master's degree at Westchester State, which is outside Philadelphia. Then we were hired in Kinshasa for 7 weeks. Then the next year we went on the circuit again and did Northern Iowa and the fair in Boston, and then we're offered jobs in
New Delhi.
New Delhi.
Yeah.
And Lisa was not certified, but I was certified at that point. But Lisa was hired as the athletic director in New Delhi.
Yeah.
That's the American Embassy School.
American Embassy School. Yep.
Wow,
So I was the
fantastic.
athletic director, the aquatics coordinator, and the PE coordinator, and I taught 4 classes.
So
Can
they
I
got their
have a
money's
copy of
worth.
your
Yeah.
resume? I just want to put my name at the top.
And
I'm just going to
4
switch my
years
name
in, I
out
was
with
ready to
yours.
say, I don't think when
and
the-
JP
when
can make it
we
look really
adopted,
nice. And then,
the babies were coming. I said, I don't think I could do this anymore. And they kind of, Lisa, can you do it for 2 more years? I said, well, yes, I think we could. And then my job kind of got split.
And then in
After that.
the summer, she started doing the Michigan State to get certification. They said, look,
Okay.
it's all
Delhi wants
coming
us
together
to do,
now.
Delhi really wants all its teachers certified.
Yep.
When we're working at Friends Central in Philadelphia as private schools, they don't require certified teachers in the U.S. So we were able to get hired as teachers. They certify the school, but not the teachers.
That's one of the reasons why we ask about that too, is because a lot of our listeners may or may not have been at a school, or they're looking at certain schools. They may not have the certain specific certification that the school's looking for.
Yeah.
But in many cases, these international schools will hire you as a teacher or for a certain position and then train you or do on the job or
Correct.
give you an opportunity to train on the job
Yeah.
in the summertime or something like that, just
That's
like you're
right.
saying. So
Yeah.
that's really, it's a little complicated, it sounds like, but it's really not.
It's not.
No.
It's not complicated.
Yeah. And it was great with the MSU program just to reflect on the teaching I was doing with my classes. And I think as you're going through that, you really are reflecting how you're doing as a teacher and answering the questions and looking at your methods and how classes are going. So I think it strengthens you
Yeah.
in the end.
Look, Lisa, much to her credit, also went on to do the national teacher certification,
National board.
national board.
Oh,
Ooh.
National Board Certified.
Yeah.
When we were
Awesome.
in New Delhi, which was, she was among the first cohorts of international teachers to do it. That took a lot of time too.
It did. And I think I started it the last 2 years.
I think before we left, you were certified.
I finished and was certified by the time started at Oman in Muscat, Jackie. So
That's right.
I can do it.
I was the anchor. around
But
her
that's
neck.
Oh,
we're
Nelson.
almost at the part, but I want to take a step back. We're almost at the part where we met because yes, folks, I do know Nelson and Lisa File. I want to talk a little bit about Amy File and, this little baby that came into your lives. Can you tell us a little bit about this international adoption that you undertook while you were there?
Well, it all started with dengue fever. I got really sick with dengue fever and ended up in the medical unit for the embassy at the time, and made it through that okay, but had to be hooked up for 2 nights. And the nurse there was going to the orphanage in New Delhi.
Mother Teresa's
Mother
orphanage.
Teresa's orphanage, Sisters of Charity.
Yeah.
Sisters of Charity.
Missionaries of Charity.
Missionaries of Charity. And for some reason, we started talking about adoption and things like that. And she said, Lisa, I would be happy to take you and Nelson there just to have a walk around when you're better. And I said, okay, that would be great. So we arranged that. And so she took us around. She said, just walk through, say hello to the sisters and just to the children. And Nelson could tell the story because he met Amy first. He saw Amy first. So you say.
Well, Amy was 8 months old at that point, and you walk by the crib, and she's reaching up by it because all the babies want attention, and rightly so.
She had just woken up from
She just woken up for a nap. I pick her up, and she has a big smile on her face, and her diaper is soaking wet. And I'm like, this kid is for us. Happy, wet diaper, cold. She's smiling. I'm like, so anyhow, it took about,
and then you handed her to me.
Yeah, I did.
So I want to tell this part. And when I held her, I was like, this is my daughter. It was so instantaneous. This is my daughter. So I held her the rest of the visit, and we said hello to and then Nelson started talking to the sisters about the process, and the nurse, she was still with us, and I wish I remembered her name.
Yeah.
I don't.
It wasn't Mother Teresa? What year was that?
That was 90, when did we adopt? 93.
93. She's born March of 93.
So wait, it was before Mother Teresa passed away.
Yeah, it was. In fact,
I have another story about that, but
I have another story about Mother Teresa.
But we'll finish with the adoption. So, and I said to the nurse, I said, I know we would really, I could feel it. She said, well, keep coming back. If the sisters see that you're sincere and their interest is here, they see how you're interacting, just keep coming. So we did. We kept coming back. And then also you talked to the sisters about the process.
Yeah, and the sisters, of course, at that point, Missionaries of Charity were not adopting to Americans in the United States, but they would adopt to Americans who were living in India. And they said, look, it's going to take a long time. There's no way. There's so much paperwork.
Maybe January,
February. So we're like, okay, we'll just keep coming back a couple times a week. And then finally we came back right before Thanksgiving, which means nothing in India. But, we were visiting and like, oh, do you want to take Amy home today? Roshni home today? And we're like,
Whoa.
We need a crib. We need
our
a
cars.
Buy some diapers.
Thanksgiving
It's like,
holiday.
by the way, you want the child today? You can have her.
That's right. And then, when we go to pick her up December 2nd, we still celebrate. We call it Coming Home Day
Coming
for Amy.
home day, yeah.
And, we light candles that day to remember this. But, to pick her up, they're like, okay, here she is. I'm like, well, you want me to sign something? I was like, did I have possession of her? Or, no, that's okay. Look, I said, I'd be a lot more comfortable. I just write a quick note here to say, we've taken.
We didn't steal the child, yes.
Could I get a receipt or something?
I know. It was just like, no, here you go.
Well, they did.
And did
give her,
they?
like a medical record. We have a piece of paper that kind of
Yeah,
had.
I think not that day, though. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
that may have come later, but we do have.
And then it was a long process to finish the adoption through the Indian court system, which was interesting, and then get U.S. citizenship in a very compressed short of time, and get her passport, and get a visa to come back to India the following summer.
Yeah.
So that was
But it all worked.
it all worked out, and it was interesting going through the Indian legal system for adoption as a foreigner.
And then two children naturally followed.
Yeah,
Amy.
very quickly.
After that, yeah, 3 years. We had Spencer, and then just almost 2 years, and then we had
Later,
Lindsay. So we have three children.
Sorry, were these
Natural.
adopted as well? These
No.
natural birth.
That's
So
right,
your
yeah.
family is three.
Yeah.
Amy, the first, is adopted, and then you got
Adopted.
two more children, all during your time in the 11 years in India.
As she was
Correct.
going through certification,
Correct.
a national teacher certification, and I was.
You like to spread things out a little bit, don't you? There, right.
We
Let's
were
just
there 11
do it
years.
all at once.
Yeah.
And Delhi was opposed to people tending not to stay because, it's a hard place, India. There's a lot of sickness, a lot of disease, a lot of poverty, and pollution was terrible then, and it got a little bit better, and it's terrible now again.
Okay, well, let me ask you about that, because the Embassy School in New Delhi is a school that's well known for international teachers. It's a nice position. It's a desirable position. But then you say the environment can be rough, the pollution, the traffic,
Yeah.
diseases. So most people tend to spend less time there than you guys spend.
Well, the board made a decision during our time there to try to purposely lengthen people's tenure, and so they raised salaries dramatically, and then they gave bonuses if you stayed 2 years and 4 years, and then there was always a big bonus that you've stayed at least 10 years. You got another big bonus. So by the time we were looking to think about leaving, we were already at year 8 or year 9. We're like, oh, geez, we're not going to leave at 9th year and miss a big bonus at 10 years.
And that was before. And what year was that? Just I'm getting a little bit lost in the time.
We started there in 93, 92,
93, okay.
and left in 2003.
Yes.
Got it. So we're in 24 now. So we're talking like 20 some years ago.
20 years ago.
So yeah, I just saw our listeners that are coming in on this. Yeah, 20 years, some years
It's a long
ago.
time ago.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
A lot of change and growth.
But still amazing to think that even back then, the embassy school had that worldwide reputation, as
It did.
as still being a very, very good school where the school takes care of you, and year in and year out, they want to retain their staff.
Yes.
They did. And the
Yes.
board made a conscious decision I think most people, the average length of stay was like 3 or 4 years, and they wanted to lengthen that to 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So they took steps to change the package, the
And it
compensation
helped.
package.
Did any of your children get to attend the school?
Yeah.
Good question. So Amy was there through 4th grade. Spencer completed 1st grade there. And Lindsay went through preschool up to year 4.
And then we transitioned as a family to Muscat, Oman, where we met Jacqueline at the American.
No, you guys know Jacqueline?
We were
amazing.
Lucky enough to know Jacqueline.
Before you, aren't we all, to be honest? Before you jump right over to Oman, how did you make that leap? How did you get in contact with the school in Oman?
Look, we were colleagues of Kevin Schaefer, who was the high school principal in New Delhi, and he became the director of TASM, and they were looking for a secondary school principal. And so I was hired into year 6 through 12 principal at TASM.
Nelson, had you been, we didn't talk about what you were doing in Delhi. Were you admin there?
I was a teacher. I started teaching year 6. The IB history teacher left 2 years right before school started, 2 years after I started, and I had taught AP history before, so I was asked last minute if I could teach high school and IB history and AP US history. I think I taught AP US too, and economics, and so I shifted to the high school, and then I became CAS coordinator, and then I became the IB coordinator. When Kevin left, they asked me to be the assistant high school principal at that point. When in New Delhi, there was a lot of turnover, so there was positions that occurred that you could then apply to in-house.
And talk about your principal training.
Oh, I also did the PTC program.
That was real important.
That was a big part of it, and it was great. I really, with Bambi.
Were you doing that one in Miami then?
I took courses in Miami, and I took courses in London, and New Delhi did help out with that. Did help pay for my PTC courses.
You made the leap to admin as you were leaving India, the New Delhi school, going into Muscat. Is that right?
Well, to full-time admin. I had been part-time admin and part-time teaching. So I was assistant principal and IB coordinator, and I was teaching 3 classes. And then I shifted to 6 through 12 full-time admin when I moved to TASM, because it was a very small school when we started, and had.
I was going to ask, how many people did they have? Because 6 to 12 is not what exists now.
No,
they have a separate middle school and a high school principal.
He did that for our first 4 years.
So I think there was only 270 students when we arrived, and by the time, and it grew very rapidly in the early 2000s, and so additional admin was needed. I mean, when I first arrived, I was 6 through 12 principal. I was the athletic director. I was, you do everything at a small school. And then I think we only had 9 or 11 graduates my first year as year 12 kids. But then the school grew to where we had 50 students, in each year group. And, 57, I think, was the highest year 12 group at one point.
Yeah. So we were in Muscat, Oman with TASM from 2003 to 2012.
So 9 years.
9 years there. And there was a huge amount of growth. And Jackie, when did you come in?
I came in 2010.
Okay.
Nelson and Keith, who some of our listeners might have heard episode earlier this year where I was interviewing Keith Boniface, who was also my high school principal and middle school principal back when Nelson was my high school principal.
Yeah, that's right.
The two of them took me out to an Indian restaurant, and that was such a treat when I came. So first Tazem flew me in, and I was one of the final candidates for the French position. They said, well, let's go out for dinner at the best Indian restaurant. And at the time in Istanbul, there was one Indian restaurant and it was super expensive. So we never went there. I was just like, wow, this is such a treat. And then Keith said, well, Nelson lived like 11 years in India, so let's let him order. And so I was like beside myself, like, oh my gosh, we got an Indian expert. This is amazing. They both ordered beers and they were insisting like, you go ahead. And I was like, no, because I was still thinking this is part of a job interview, even though it was dinner. I wasn't going to get, like a little tipsy or something with a beer. So no, I said, no, thanks. That's okay. But I came in 2010, and you guys were living in that big house. Were you in that big house? Was that housing always there, or did that get constructed while you were there?
No, it was there the whole time. And in Delhi, too, we lived on campus, which was nice. Some people lived off campus, but we enjoyed living on campus, to be frank. You always had power, you always had water.
Things were taken care of, things happened.
There's other families for our kids to play with.
Yes.
There was...
Yeah.
It was
the 1 minute commute.
Yeah, to walk to work in the morning. I came home.
Well, and the access to the pool, Lisa, as aquatics,
Yeah.
you just wanted to be close to the pool.
Yeah, it was easy. Yeah.
And so we lived on campus in Muscat too, in a bigger house, which was nice, and a little bit of a yard because Delhi just had all apartments.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were very fortunate to have that house in Muscat.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
That move must have been very nice, because going from a crowded, polluted city to Oman, which I'm going to guess the air was lovely, the environment around you was nice. How was that? How did you feel about that move as a family? And Lisa, you didn't mention what your job was in Muscat.
In Muscat, teaching PE, K through 12, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how was that environment? How did the family adjust to the new city?
Well, I remember first your point from moving from a crowded Delhi to Muscat. I do remember, the sky, it's open. We can see it. We can see the moon.
There's a
We
sky.
can see the
Every
sun.
night.
So it's awareness of the phases. And we did, early on, things did grow up around the school.
Yeah.
But we did have goat herds walk past outside the school walls. when
Everybody's got goat herds. Come on.
That's
Come on,
right.
Lisa.
And but I do remember, since we had been in New Delhi for so long and we were the old hands that had been there, coming to a new school and being the new folks, that took an adjustment, and just to kind of check with myself, okay, this is a new thing here. We've been so used to being familiar with everything, and now we're learning everything about the school, where we're living, how things work, where to go.
It was a very young school. It was only founded, I think, in 1997 or 96. We arrived in 2003. So it was a relatively new school, so there weren't policies need to be written, all that sort of stuff had to happen, and I was the secondary principal expected to write it.
It was very busy. It was very
Who
busy.
were the
And
students at
with
your
3
school?
children.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. But look,
Who were
we were busy most weekends, with Lisa teaching swim schools on weekend, and I was always student events going on. So other teachers had a much more relaxed lifestyle, able to go camping on weekends and go get away that way. I wasn't, as the principal, because there was too much going on. But we would go away on holidays and go, tremendous place to camp in Oman.
Miles
empty
of beaches, tent camping. And
up in the mountains,
no,
you'd go. It was
no
really
one's on the
beautiful.
beach. It's really, really nice.
Although I'm sure it's different now too. That was 20 years ago as well.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can attest that people are still doing exactly that. They're just hitting their cars on the weekend. They in fact come to school with their cars loaded up.
Yeah.
And then they just go
Friday.
straight from school into the mountains or into the beach.
Right.
And do that
We were always a little
do
jealous of
that
that,
camping.
Jacqueline, to be honest. You see people going off on the weekend, it's like, well, we in school.
This might be a good time to ask you, Nelson. A lot of teachers I talk to who have been in the classroom for a while, they are thinking about transitioning into admin, and you're someone who made that transition. But it sounds like to me as if you've talked about sort of the pluses and the minuses, right? On one hand, more responsibility, maybe better compensation, maybe more control over your day. But then you're talking about, but there went my weekends. I was wondering if you could just, when you look back at sort of those positions, the classroom and admin, what do you think about that move for people who are thinking about it?
Look, to be frank, it was hard, because you don't get into teaching to deal with disgruntled parents or disgruntled teachers or teachers who are upset that they don't have hot water at their house, or, you get into teaching because you like working with kids.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden your day's not necessarily working with kids unless, they're misbehaving kids. So, it was hard transition. And, what I really enjoyed about teaching in the classroom was seeing kids grow and get it as they matured throughout the year or throughout the couple of years that you're working with them. And you don't have that as a full-time administrator, and so you had to, Kevin Schaefer is actually very good. He said, well, think about your staff as your classroom and how are you helping your staff grow and develop and seeing how they're changing, and what can you do to assist them to grow as professionals and grow as individuals. And so that was a big switch, that's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was.
And you're at an international school, so as an admin, you are worried about your teachers incoming, or they're worried about whether they have power, whether they have water, whether they've gotten sick.
That's right.
Go to the hospital with them, or
How sick
there's a
they
lot
are.
of things. Yeah, a lot of things you have to support them with on a daily basis. They and their families, if they have families with them, right?
And their kids are sick, and if if their kids aren't doing well, they're not going to do well. If their housing situation isn't good, they're focused
they're
on
not going to teach well.
Fixing that.
fixing that as opposed to working in the classroom and helping kids grow.
Yeah, it's a real dynamic job to be an admin at an international school, especially a smaller one, because everything is centered around let's make that teacher comfortable enough to let them focus on teaching.
Correct.
And that's a real great dynamic of our international
It
arena.
is.
And I have to say, in the different places we've been, the community that the teachers build and create is really important, and the support you get from that is really, you become, I've always felt that each school became the neighborhood. Like we, grew up in a neighborhood and you could rely on your neighbors and trust the same sort of sense came with the teachers. You built that neighborhood community.
Your comfort zone, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I really do appreciate about the whole international school experience is what our children experience going through these classrooms, where at AES we had kids from 50 different countries, and then moving to TASM, it grew into, kids from around the world, and that they're in a daily setting with kids from around the world, getting to know them and their families and their parents. And so talk about having an expanded worldview. It was just, going through the national school experience. I just really appreciate that for our children.
Yeah.
Because they had that their entire lives. Yeah.
So your kids grew up as TCK kids, were they
Yes.
not?
They did.
In Oman and in Australia.
You made me think about, it can be challenging, families in the international circuit, because there are ups and downs for kids going to international schools? You think, okay, our kids are going to these great schools. It's going to be, every day is going to be just full of great wonder and it's going to be perfect. I was wondering if you could talk about what are the ups and downs like? I mean, when kids have bad days or even a bad year at an international school, does that make you, as a parent, what kind of challenge does that pose for you?
Or sometimes you question, and I think what's also interesting dynamic is that these are our jobs. We're contracted, and there's an obligation that way, but also as a parent and your children and how things are going, I think luckily for us, our kids were very adaptable and comfortable with the whole international school experience. In a sense, that's all they knew because they came in as babies and 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and they're with their parents. This is where their parents work. So this is just how the world works, kind of thing. But I do remember some families coming in with their kids being a little older in elementary school, and one child got really sick with dengue fever, and she just felt so bad. What did I do to my child to bring them here? And they got so sick. So you do have those moments of questioning and wondering. And then in the end, hopefully you can work through it all. And we also saw embassy families in New Delhi where it was the same thing, that's their job and they're doing their work, but there were issues with the child and the school, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, and luckily, our kids didn't need, some of our kids needed support at different times, but they didn't need a lot of support. They weren't special, learning difference type of kids who learn things way differently than the mainstream. I think that makes it harder is, if you're a parent and a teaching parent or an embassy parent, and your child's all of a sudden not fitting in because their learning style is so different, or how they learn or the pace they learn, et cetera, is so different. Many international schools don't have the resources to support huge learning differences. So I know that's different.
Yeah, fortunately, that's changing. That's changing with learning support departments, and a lot of my clients are those kind of counselors and special eds and special need teachers that are finding jobs now overseas. But boy, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case.
It was different.
Yeah.
But as Nelson said, as our children needed support, they did receive it, and that was very helpful.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Hey, long-time listener, love it. So many people
from Saudi, I believe, or somewhere in the Middle East.
I'm calling it from the Middle East. One question about TCKs while we're here. I love this question, and it's just to throw it out there. But if someone asks your kids where they're from, what do they say?
They hate it.
Our youngest daughter totally disliked this question. She just didn't know how to answer. And I tried to help them to give the short answer, but no, they just didn't know. They kind of threw their hands up a little bit because during this, Hawaii became home base for us, even though they knew my family was in California, Nelson's family was in Philadelphia, and we visited those places. But Hawaii became home base. So do I say I'm from Hawaii, or where I grew up,
or where I was born?
So a lot of time, because Spencer and Lindsay were both born in Philadelphia, they would just, I'm from Philadelphia.
Knowing nothing about Philadelphia, they would just say, I'm from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
People would start talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and everything. They'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But one thing I did say, because someone said this to me leaving Peace Corps. So that they said, because that's a big transition, going from Peace Corps service back to the U.S. And just, people will be interested. Some will, some won't. Just keep answering their questions. But once they stop asking questions, then they're done.
Stop telling them.
They've learned what they wanted to know. So I said to my kids the same thing. Just if they're asking questions about your experiences, then just keep answering. But if the questions stop, then you can stop.
Yeah, I've got two responses to that. One is I feel like sometimes going home and wearing a T-shirt that says, yes, I teach overseas. They have microwaves. They don't live in caves. I don't teach English. All these explanatory, like one sentence things that I could put together on a shirt.
Right.
It would make things so much easier. The reason I asked you about the TCK question and the identity, Matt Judd, who is another host on our show, one of the founders of the show, he has 4 kids, and they go to the Maldives a lot. years ago, they used to be like, Dad, can we go home to the Maldives again? And it's like super expensive, like just to go with the family for a week,
Yes.
and they love it. But the
yeah.
kids are like, Daddy, we want to go back to our Maldives home. Can we do that?
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Oh,
And that is a
yes.
great place. That is a great
I
place.
love the TCK option. There's so many more things to talk about. We still have to talk about Mother Teresa. I still want to talk about more schools because we're still 20 years behind.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface.
Well, after Muscat, I was feeling, we were there 9 years and thought we want to try something else. I saw an ad for an independent school in Hobart, Australia, as the head of school. In Australia, they call head of school principal.
It's like yeah.
But the school is, K through 12, day in boarding, 1,350 kids.
Is Hobart Tasmania?
Yeah, Tasmania.
Hobart, Tasmania. Yeah.
Hobart, Tasmania.
And,
Wow.
Blah, 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 blah,
So
spin around
we
like
got hired
Tasmanian
there.
devil.
I got offered the position, and that's where we just finished 11 years.
Wow.
So 12 to 23.
Correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
Good
And
math.
somebody's
That's fourth
doing
grade
math.
right there. Fourth
Somebody's
grade
doing math down there.
And it's a Quaker school. It's the only one in Australia, and it's the largest Quaker school in the world. But where Nelson grew up in Philadelphia, he grew up a Quaker in a Quaker family, and also attended a Quaker school. So that was part of the qualifications, in a sense.
Well, appeal that they wanted.
Appeal.
And also, we taught at a Quaker school when I first started teaching.
Yeah, both of us. Yeah.
And so anyhow, I was there as the head of school for 11 years. It was a very complex school, more than just a school, because we also had a daycare center that ran year round that started with babies at 12 weeks old, and then we had a health and fitness club that was had about 2,000 community members, and we had payroll of 400 people every 2 weeks that we had to.
You're kidding.
No.
400.
But you weren't in charge of that, at least.
in
Like
charge
you
of
had an
He
accounting
was where
department,
the
right?
buck stopped.
That's right.
He was in that position.
That's right.
And he thought Tazen was busy those first 4 years. Nothing compared to the Friends School.
No, that's right.
It was
really a year-round job.
It was,
So who were the students at the Friends School in Hobart?
They were Australian kids. It was an independent Australian private school.
Okay, so there were kids who grew up and lived in Tasmania.
Yeah, they were
Yes.
Tasmanian kids.
Yes.
We had a small
Tasmanian
boarding
kids.
section that we'd have some international kids, some Chinese
China.
and Japanese and Singaporeans and Vietnamese would come. But yeah, they were Tasmanian.
Yeah. So that was another.
What's the
And-
population
and-
of Tasmania?
Population of Tasmania is about 500,000. So it's the smallest state in Australia.
Yeah.
And the southern half, where Hobart is, had about the state is pretty much split in half, with 250,000 in the north and 250,000 in the south.
And you had 1,300 kids at your school, your private school, out of a
Yes.
500,000. Wow.
Yeah, so we were among the largest. We were among the largest private schools.
That's big.
In fact, we were probably the largest private school in Tasmania.
And remind us now who came with you, because I'm pretty sure not everybody. That Amy, I think, went off to university.
No, Amy had graduated from Muscat,
Tazen.
and so she went and tried community college in California.
She stayed with my sister, so that was good. Yeah.
And then our youngest daughter, Lindsay, came, and our son came. So Spencer came for year 11 and 12. And our daughter, Lindsay, thought she was coming for 9, 10, 11, 12. But since the half-year schedule,
We thought she was ready for
because the
10th.
Southern Hemisphere year starts in February,
Right.
and they thought she was ready for year
10.
10. And so age-wise,
Wow.
she could fit. So she really skipped a year and went to year 10. And so she was there for years 10, 11, 12, and Spencer was there for 11 and 12. Yeah. Great.
So Nelson, longtime caller, calling in from Middle East. Nelson, you were the head of school. What about Lisa? Did you talk to the head of school and see if you could get a position in PE, or did you do something else?
We made the decision that when we moved, I wouldn't work anymore at the school. I called myself the home manager at that time, just to take care of what we needed, what Spencer and Lindsay needed.
Help the kids transition, make sure that it was well.
Yeah, and just do all those sort of transition things. And we met with a few headmaster school directors of Quaker schools in Philadelphia before we went. And one of them said they made that similar decision with between he and his wife, and she stopped working And they said that was a really good decision. And it just helped around the house and for our home life and family life, not to have both of us just so super busy going through that transition again, being new again, figuring things out. So taking that step back. And to be honest, personally, I was ready.
Well, you just had a neck fusion operation too. So
That would do it.
Well,
The
what
products.
I can imagine is that you didn't have the support that you can have in India and in Oman with
Correct.
nannies and drivers or what have you. I mean, the amount of support you can get in a lot of these international schools is incredible, so that you can be super busy because your children are going to be looked after. But now you're in Australia,
Yeah.
like one of the world-class countries, where it's going to be really pricey to have a gardener, a driver, a nanny.
doesn't happen.
You don't have that. And you're right,
Yeah.
Jackie, in India and Oman, having that support enabled working parents to, focus on your job and your kids and not worry about those home maintenance things. And going to Australia, I mean, that was one of our biggest changes and transitions, was going from international school to an independent, even though we were still overseas, still abroad.
For us, it was international,
It was international, but it wasn't.
but no one else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for a few we had some boarding kids. It was
Yeah.
international for it.
Right. So that was a transitional change.
And it was very different too. It had a huge alumni network. It had a huge footprint in the community. Within 3 weeks of my appointment starting there, I was invited by the governor of Tasmania for tea. Just one-on-one, because there was such an institution within the state that the
Yeah.
governor wanted to,
How
welcome
many
me.
people can say that, right? I mean, seriously, I don't know any. You're the first person I've ever met that's had tea with the governor of
Tasmania.
of somewhere in Tasmania.
Yeah.
At the
No
governor's
kidding,
mansion, that's
right? What I like about your conversation now, what about this topic, is that you bring up the fact that the international school that you worked at, your international experience for this school was not an international, so to speak. It was a national school.
Correct.
I did that my first year overseas. I taught at an international school, which the student body was like 99.99999% Honduran, and then like a few Americans and a few Koreans. And it was very different experience, but it was
Yeah.
still rewarding. So the fact that you were working at a school that you were a small percentage of the community as expat is interesting. It's a different flavor, right?
It is.
And
It is.
all
Plus-
these schools that you've had are all different flavors.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're in charge. Everybody's looking to you, and it's like all.
Well, yeah,
new
in
to
your
me.
case, I've never been there before.
So, I'd never been to Australia before the job interview. But it
Now, I have to ask,
Yeah.
Nelson, did they understand you? Because, we have a hard time understanding Aussies. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the reverse is true for them.
No, they watch so much American movies and television shows. It's much easier for them to understand an American than it is.
Yeah.
And again, I was exhausted my first 4 months, not just from the work level. I had to listen so closely to what everybody was saying all day long.
What did he say?
It's so
like-
different than the Outback Steakhouse, isn't it? I mean, really, honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, what did they say there? What did that mean?
The vowels, it's the vowels that always, you
The
can so
accent.
misinterpret.
Yeah.
Right.
Misinterpret
Yeah, it was-
what they're saying.
And we're all speaking English, but sometimes how we use words are a bit
Very different.
differently. So that was a learning curve as well.
Look, it was great.
Different cultures separated by the same language,
That's right.
right?
Winston Churchill quote. So.
Yeah.
So now you mentioned talking about getting Australian citizenship.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what did that entail?
Look, it's very hard to get a visa to Australia to work. Incredibly hard. The people that are hiring you has to prove to the government that there's no Australians qualified to do that job. And so once you get the visa, you get a working visa. Then you get permanent residency. And once you get permanent residency, it's pretty straightforward to get citizenship. But the big hurdle was getting permanent residency.
Yeah. We came on Nelson's working visa, which was for 4 years. His job contract was for 5 years. So as we're getting towards the end of the 4 years, we have to, what's the next step? And that's when we became permanent
And
residents.
I kept joking with the board. It's like, look, I'm going to be sitting in Hawaii. I don't really care. If you guys don't get this visa renewed, I'm set.
But it came through.
It came through.
And that's really where Australia puts up the barriers as permanent
Huge
residency. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a high cost. It's a long
The
process.
school did help with all that, though.
Yes, the school is very helpful.
And then now that you're Australian citizens, because I know this is a law, you have to vote in every election. Do you still have to do
Not
that?
as an expat. If you're living abroad, you don't have to vote. So if you're living in Australia, it's required to vote.
Yeah, you pay a fee if you don't.
Yeah, you pay a fine.
Yeah.
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 I thought it stretched beyond their borders.
No,
Oh
no.
yeah.
No.
I said, wouldn't that be an interesting experiment in America?
Do you two plan to return to Australia periodically at this point?
Yeah. Look, our youngest daughter's
Yeah.
making Australia her home, so she became an Australian citizen too.
So she has an Australian passport.
Yes.
Yes.
And she's living in Canberra. She's working for the Canberra government, and her partner works for the Australian State Department, which is they call
That's
DFAT.
awesome.
And so, in fact, Lisa's going in 2 weeks to visit Lindsay for a couple of weeks.
Just out of curiosity, what's the flight time? Is it? Can you get a direct Hawaii,
Yeah.
Sydney?
Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
From Honolulu.
What is that flight? What is that time on that
That's
flight?
about from Honolulu.
9 to 10
Sydney.
hours.
Yeah.
Depending on the wind.
That's
Yeah.
about as close to Australia as you can get.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. And then our oldest daughter, Amy, who we adopted from Mother Teresa's orphanage, she lives in Philadelphia. So that's about 12
We're about
hours.
half-
We're about
Hawaii's
halfway,
halfway.
between Philadelphia and
Yeah, you're closer to Australia than you are Philadelphia.
a little
Yeah,
closer.
we are.
A little closer.
And where's Spencer now?
Spencer's here with us.
He's with us. Yeah.
Ah, he's in Hawaii. Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So are you fully retired? Retired? You're not visiting the local school saying, hey, what do you want me to do?
You need a water management?
Not quite there yet.
No, look, we've only
It's been
only
4
finished
months.
up January 7th. You know.
So January 7th was the end of the Australian school year.
Well,
and
it's the end
that's
of my
when you said
contract.
your,
Yep.
yes,
that's
the
right.
end of your contract.
So the new school year started February 1st in Australia.
That blows me. Sorry, I don't mean to belabor the point, but Australia is about the only country I can think of where they have a school year not in sync with most of the. I mean, Japan is different too, but the international schools there are in sync with the rest of the international school world. Australia, what is the history of that?
Look, I think it's just that's the
seasons.
end of her summer.
Yeah.
So
the
their
end of
summer
their
is
summer.
November, December,
Okay,
January.
it's the end of their summer. Naturally.
So February 1st is starting to get the
That's
very end of
fall.
the summer.
That's the
And
autumn.
their
If I'm
school
a-
was a national school, so it wasn't.
yeah, it
an
was,
international.
wasn't
but-
an international school.
But we have tons of we're very popular in Australia. We have a lot of teachers there. Is it a real big deal for if you're thinking about taking your family to Australia to be in school, or vice versa? You're an Australian family, you want to teach in Europe or abroad. How big of a deal is that school year? You mentioned, my daughter got bumped up a year and she did just fine. Is that usually the case?
Look, it really just depends on the child, and it's also, I like to hire international Australians that were returning to Australia after working abroad in Europe or Asia, and it really, they had to either leave their international school mid-year in December to get to us to start the beginning of our school year, or they asked, "Can I leave in July, which is the middle of our school year,
Right.
to start the international school where they're going?" And I was pretty flexible with that.
So sometimes you would say, yes, you can leave in July.
Most times I would
because
say yes, you can
most
leave.
of the world in the international circuit, that's when they have to be on their new
Yeah,
post.
especially if they were, they taught in international schools before returning to Tasmania, and they said, "Look, we've been here a couple of years, and it's not what we thought it was going to be. Returning home, we want to go back to the international circuit." We would work with them to make it as best we could.
Well, and Nelson, you bring up a good point. Your transition from Oman to Friends, I seem to remember you left, did you leave in December?
No, we left in June at the end of the school
you
year,
left-
TASM, and then we gave ourselves a 6-month sabbatical.
Yeah.
So we had to restart in January in Hobart.
So a bit of a gap.
Nelson, could I get a 6-month sabbatical? Could you just give me one of those? I'd like to have that 6 months off. Can I leave early?
No problems.
Well, it was self-funded.
Self-funded
It was a
sabbatical.
self-funded.
Yeah.
Self-funded
Yeah.
sabbatical. Let me ask you two a question now. That, hey, by the way, congratulations! 3 months into 6 months into retirement. Was it hard getting to this point, financially, physically, mentally? What's it been getting to this point in your lives?
Geographically.
I think, it's been hard. I mean, we've had to not only leave a school and a community there, but we're repatriating at the same time, as a lot of international school teachers will do. And so there's, we've had this home here for 25 years, but we, haven't lived in it for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of delayed maintenance. There's, we have to, find doctors to take us on. We had, we find a lawyer to finally do our will. And
You have power. Obviously, you have power there.
You do have power. You have lights. You
Right.
have.
power.
Good.
That's right.
You didn't have to call up the water manager.
No. But we're living in rural Hawaii, so we do lose power, believe it or not.
It can happen.
Not infrequently, to be
Yeah.
frank. So we're getting solar and batteries,
And batteries. Yeah.
because it's not unusual in rural Hawaii to lose power.
Wow. I've
But,
never been there.
But let's talk about that, because many people don't think about the repatriation culture shock, because you guys have been out for so long that, and like you say, even though you've been coming back, it's summertime, right? You come back, it's lovely,
holiday.
it's summer, and then you go back home, which
Yeah.
is overseas.
Right.
Now you don't get to escape. Are you getting island fever?
Oh, Hawaii's beautiful. You would never.
No, I think Jackie, it's too early on to say that. Actually, there's a lot of comfort coming here. That's been our home for so long, because there's a lot that's very comfortable. The whole 30 years, what became difficult was we were always in two places. I mean, you have your two bank accounts, you have your two addresses, you have your two this, your two that.
Where are we keeping our important papers? Where's our wedding certificate to get the visa? Where's our birth certificates?
So just managing all of that over the 30 years, that did get tiresome. I think we became pretty good at it. You become adaptable to that. What do you need to do? How best should we do it? And that'll be different for every family going, doing the international school circuit, what works best for you and your family. But just that
It's like
two-ness.
you're putting down roots.
Yeah.
I mean, you're growing your roots. You've already have roots there, but now you're letting the roots blossom.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So
So we're reconnecting with family here. Lisa's brothers lived here for 30 years too, and so
Same
we had
island.
family, and
yeah,
so that's one of the reasons we chose where we are. And
Spencer's cousins are here.
Is that hard? We talk a lot about what it's like for a TCK to re-enter their passport country, but as adults, we don't talk about that a lot. Is it hard when you get together with the people you live there, they're your community now, they're talking about all the local stuff for the last 30 years, and you're like, well, you want to hear about Hobart? And then nobody wants to hear about Hobart. Is that hard?
Now, and again, it goes back to, as long as they keep asking questions, there's interest, and you just keep answering.
Yeah.
And then I think for us on the reverse side, we should keep asking questions just so that we're catching up on and learning, and and the lovely thing about Hawaii again is all the cultural aspects of being here.
Yeah.
We just had a huge hula dance festival called the Merry Monarch Festival. May 1st is May Day or Lay Day here, and there's programs around that. So there's just a lot for us to.
I mean, Hawaii isn't
Connect
quite the
to.
United States either, so that still makes it kind of interesting. Culturally, I mean, it's incredibly expensive, and people being priced out of paradise, and we were lucky enough to purchase our house as long ago as we did. We're not moving back to Philadelphia.
I like what you say about waiting for people to ask questions. When I go back, and I haven't retired, and I don't think I ever will in my life, but when I repatriate back for at least a little bit of time, and I wear two hats. I wear the hat that sort of like comes to life when someone asks me questions about international, or they've been overseas and they have international experiences,
have
or they know
stories.
me. I have that hat. And then I have the other hat that's sort of quietly like talking about mortgages and talking about the old gas station and talking about, what's going on in the schools in the U.S. and all that U.S. news and stuff. I have to wear two different hats when I go back. But I have not repatriated. I've not been back for 4 months before. And that's one of the reasons that Kent and Jack and I are asking you these questions about repatriation, what it's like, getting back into the language that you think you know, but you go back and they're using different words. You're like, what? What's that?
What does this mean? And,
Different jokes and different things that you've sort of unplugged from, and now you're getting back into full time. So
Right.
it's exciting to hear your experience going back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do feel sometimes entering into being the older person, well, I remember when this used to be like this and this used to be like that, and realizing I remember my older people saying the same things and just following into that pattern. But
What? I've been gone for 30 years and you think you're going to change things? Right? What's the nerve of people to change things? Well, I've been gone for 10 years. What's going on?
That's right.
yeah.
Or still calling things by the old name, like, you know, where the Pizza Hut used to be.
Right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not a Pizza Hut. And it's been like 3 other things since
Right.
the Pizza Hut.
Right.
So we have 2 questions that we ask on the ITP. And so I'm going to ask the first question. And in all these moves, were there 3 things you absolutely needed for you to feel comfortable in your new home or your new country? And family is already included in that.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Look, I think the biggest thing is to try to remain calm and realize that things are different when you're moving. Again, you need to make sure when you're moving kids, you got to make sure your kids are good. You know, in order for you guys to be good and be productive. You know, if your kids are coming home and crying every night because they hate school or they hate friends, you know, whatever, then that's not going to be good for your family and good for your own well-being.
And going along with that is that you got to give yourself 3 months. Really, just
Yeah,
be
even
there.
3 to
and
6 months.
Be 3 months before you make any sort of determination about things.
Yeah.
Just give yourself that time.
And probably the biggest thing is don't talk about, well, in my old school, we did this way. My old school, we did this.
It's like talking about an ex.
Nobody wants to hear that.
No one cares. No.
That's right. No. We're here.
Yeah.
What are you doing now? Don't talk about how things were in a school that nobody else was at.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's always the challenge. That's always the challenge. And I'm always saying, well, you know what, Tasem.
Yeah.
She won't
And I haven't
shut
been
up
at
about
Tasem. I haven't been at Tasem for, I'm trying to think, like 12 years. So yeah. No, 12, 17, 17 to 24. What is that?
That's
Math
That's the best
teacher.
guy. Yeah. Take
so
your shoes off.
You didn't say, "Oh, there's no snacks in the staff room." Well, my old school had a revolution.
That's right.
And you want to talk about snacks?
The French Foreign Legion parachuted into Kinshasa and took the intersections. And you're talking about snacks?
I had tea with the governor of Hobart, and you don't even have any tea here?
Yeah.
At my old school.
There's the tea. Yeah. And I tell you, those guys were tough looking.
Yeah, the
I
French
will
Foreign
never
Legion.
forget.
The French Foreign Legion.
Yeah,
Hey, you
yeah.
bring up the French Foreign Legion and government. Hey, do you have any safe, you have one safe kind of, let's say, police story for us or customs story for us?
I have a couple of stories from Muscat. Maybe you can tell the story from Mother Teresa, which was kind of I was once got pulled over by the police on the road, and they just passed a law about not looking at your phone. These mobile phones had just come out in Oman, in Muscat. And the police pulled me over. I was like, oh, geez, he goes, why do you make me pull you over? Why do you do this? I said, I don't want to pull you over. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. It was a fault. He said, no, don't look at your phone. Please, I let you go. But don't let me do this to you
He
again.
didn't want to work. He didn't want to do anything. He's
was just
looking at
sitting
his
there minding
phone.
his own business,
He's
and you
looking at
come
his
driving
own phone.
Yeah, look, the Omanis were so gentle and so pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
That was genuine for him to say, who wants to give tickets? I don't like giving tickets. And anyhow, you can tell the Mother Teresa story real quick.
Okay. Well, and one of the other joys of international schools is coaching. And I was the coach for the swim team, and then you get to travel to other countries and schools where the meets are being held and the tournaments are being held. So we were traveling back from Dhaka, Bangladesh to New Delhi, India, and we were 30 kids, 3 coaches, and there was a delay in boarding the plane. in
Calcutta.
Calcutta, because we went Dhaka, Calcutta, New Delhi. So I'm thinking, oh, and they said something about we need to check the tire. And in my head, I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope this tire's okay. It's not going to blow out when we land. So there's a certain amount of delay.
Indian Airlines did not have the best reputation at that time.
So, but we board and we go, and then the flight's fine, and then we land fine, and we're starting the 33 of us heading towards the baggage area. And I look over and I see this group, and it's Mother Teresa, and with her entourage, the father and a couple others, sisters with her. And the kids start coming to me and saying, can we give her money? Can we give her money? And I said, yes, you can, but give it to the father. Do not give it directly to Mother Teresa. So the kids are just emptying their pockets, giving everything that they had because they wanted to support her. And I was able to go over to her and speak to her and just, say on behalf of the kids that they're just, wanting to share this, and that my husband and I had adopted our daughter Amy from the orphanage in New Delhi, and she was just really very gracious and speaking about how they also had organizations in Philadelphia and things like that, trying to make a connection with me. And I have to say, being in her presence, you did feel that holiness. It was amazing. It was significant, and I feel very blessed that I was able to have that journey from Amy, starting with the nurse, to actually tell Mother Teresa about Amy. So and Mother Teresa did visit the orphanage prior to us being there when Amy was there, and Amy was sick. If there were any sick children in the orphanage, when Mother Teresa visited, she would always bless those children. So Amy has a special medallion that was given to her because she was blessed by Mother Teresa. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the international schools, you never know who you're going to meet.
I don't know how to follow up with that. It's like we're all three speechless. Like, where do we go? That's like the perfect ending right there.
Yeah, you're just going on a swim meet trip with your kids, and that's what your air travel is like.
That came full circle for you, completely full circle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nelson and Lisa File, do you have any social media, anything you want the ITP crowd to check out, blogs, anything going right now?
At the moment.
No, I mean, Jacqueline contacted me through LinkedIn, and I think my title says transitioning from full employment.
Okay.
So Nelson and Lisa, as we're wrapping this up, do you have any words of wisdom for our listeners out there that are possibly considering following in your footsteps? Maybe they're looking at a 30-year career overseas. Some words that you can leave them with?
I would say go for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If your heart is leading you this way and you have an interest of just broadening your horizons and your experiences, and especially you have an interest in travel, because once you're working overseas, the trips you can do to other countries that are close to you is just, the things you'll see and learn and the people you meet and the experiences you have, I just feel it's so worth it.
Yeah. Look, I would add just that it's all about the education still. I mean, we want good people in front of the kids that we're working with, even though kids transition very quickly in international schools usually, and teachers transition very quickly in international schools. We want to create a community where we are. If you're willing to invest to being where you are and be, your great educator that you are, that's terrific. We chose to spend expanded periods of time at the schools we were at because we enjoyed the communities we were part of.
Yeah.
And, we weren't the kind of the tourist international school teachers. People do 2 years here, 2 years there, 2 years there. And sometimes, the administrators are looking at that and say, oh, what am I going to invest in? If I'm going to train this person and they're really only there 2 years, that's a big expense for us. But I'm talking like an administrator there. Anyhow.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's wherever you are, it's about the kids, it's about the teaching, it's about, working with families and
the community.
Families are struggling too. They're new to those countries lots of times too, and they don't know what's going on. And a lot of them, I know in Muscat, they didn't know about the American school system. And so, kind of like constantly explaining to them what the North American school system was like, because it was very different than Malaysian or Singaporean or Venezuelan. And I felt that was, but just be committed to where you are.
I would like to thank our very special guests, Nelson and Lisa File. You could find them in rural Hawaii. Please visit them. I'd like to thank my co-host, JP Mint. You can find her at jpmintconsulting.com. I'd also like to thank Greg, the single guy. You could find his